Hello and welcome back to the Beauty Way podcast. Today, Kirsty and I have a beautiful soul sister of mine, Kelly Bowen. And Kelly is an incredibly magical soul and who does lots and lots of things and is actually very much a master and a expert in many, many different topics. And one of the things that she spends a lot of her time doing is in her incredible business, Lifestyle Finance, which offers opportunities for people to purchase and move into different courses and products that they may otherwise not be able to afford by paying up front. And it offers this incredible opportunity for coaches, facilitators, healers to get paid up front for their incredible offerings without having to offer long-term payment plans. And so Kelly and I have been friends for a really long time. And Kelly actually lives just up the road from me. If I wave from here, she could almost see me just up here from down the hill, but not for very long because she's going to move away very, very soon. And it's very sad. However, it's a total pleasure to have you today, Kelly. And we thought that we would expand on the conversation of creativity and the beauty way and talk about all of these different ways that we can get creative when it comes to money and when it comes to the way that we build and create different ways of expressing ourselves in the world. And so welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Carissa. That was a beautiful intro. I love you and I'm so excited to be here and to share this because I think like some of the different projects you and I have been working on over let's say the last 24 months have been very creative in typical spaces that you wouldn't really think about creativity. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you both and share with your listeners and just help, I guess, plant even more seeds of creativity and how just because something's been done a particular way for as long as it's been done doesn't mean it needs to continue to be done that way. And
Oh, I love that.
yeah, and that feminine energies can be very creative and bring so much like gifts to what would otherwise be considered typical masculine environments.
Yes, I love that. And so for context for people, I probably haven't mentioned this on the podcast at all, but along with all of the amazing things that I love to do and the way that I coach and facilitate and stuff like that, I also am a systems and tech genius, if I will call myself that. Things
Genius
just
is understating.
things just tend to start working when I'm around. Our beautiful friend Gabby came to dinner the other night and she brought her new phone with her and she said to me, I've tried to work this at home and I can't make it work. So I thought if I just bring it to your house, it'll start working. And I was like, you're probably right. It didn't in the end, but it's very typical that it would. And so some of the amazing projects that Kelly and I have been co-creating in this way for probably about 2 years now. And what I do for Lifestyle Finance and for Kelly, is support in the architecture of how the business operates. And so I create the systems and have them be sort of integrated with all of the back and front of business kind of systems. And so it's actually it actually makes me really excited when I find solutions to technical problems. And it's sort of a little bit of a quirk of mine. Sometimes I can go on about a tech system and people just kind of eyes glaze over and they're sort of looking at me like, I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. And so every now and again, when I meet somebody who's like techie as well, I just geek out with them and it gets really exciting for me. But it's also something that I talk about like outside of that sort of world very often. And so that's what she's referring to when she says that we've been co-creating together in a few different ways in the past. So.
Yeah, and you're selling yourself short. Like I was literally managing an appointment system for a small brokerage with I think two brokers, around 1.5 brokers at the time, with like taking emails coming in, keeping lists like on paper about who was to be called and in what order. She's looked at what I'm doing and then bringing on new referral partners. She's looked at what I'm doing. She's like, "Where's your calendar booking system?" And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be on a schedule. She's like, you gotcha, and this is going to help you. And then with like all of like these continuously repetitive processes that was taking up my time, she's like, we don't need to do it like that anymore. We're going to do it like this. And it's all going to be in one place. And in fairness, in that year, just that by you putting in a booking system and you automating the referral partner onboarding system, that put at least I think I looked at that, it was like $138,000 on the bottom line, just in that alone. Not that was just in the referral partner part of the business, not just the actual growth from having a much better lead management system and being able to serve those people in a much more time efficient manner. So she undersells herself. She's incredible, and has
Amazing.
to look
Amazing.
at like, why are you doing it like that? Let's do it like this. And I'm like, all right, you go.
It's definitely one of the ways in which I express creativity, because what I see when I start to build any form of intimacy with somebody's offerings or business, and when they start sharing with me what they're doing and how they're doing it, it's like instantly I get visions for how it could be done more effectively, more efficiently, more systemized, more automated. Like, let's make it more available for automation. Like, the more things that we can automate, the less time is required for someone to actually do a task, and then they can actually spend their time doing the thing that they love. And so, yeah, it's been a really fun thing. And I love seeing the results of the implementation of some, automation or creation of things. And what we have done together has evolved far significantly beyond an appointment system. That's just where we started. Now it's something far grander, and we've gone to the next stage of that. I'm really excited for the growth that will make available moving forward.
Yeah, it's huge.
You know what you're both talking about, I think, is something that a lot of business owners struggle with in the first place. And so I wanted to just ask this question because, Kelly, when Carissa said to you, you should have looked at your appointment setting system, how did you go? Because what I've seen is that a lot of business owners struggle with letting go of that aspect, with letting go of control. And so in order to move into that sense of creativity, is there a part of you that knew, or is that just your personality that knew, like, okay, I actually need to let go here and to allow things to flow more easily? What was your process with that?
Yeah, great question. So for me, there was really two parts with that. And this is something that Chris and I have been like really refining between the communication with us with that. I knew I had to let go of things, and I was ready for it to be systemized and structured, because there was so much of my time that was being caught in doing mundane things, and that would build up, and I knew that I didn't want to be doing that anymore. So as soon as she showed me the solution of, hey, we can just automate this with a click of a button and it can come through this system, here, hand out this link and this will do XYZ, I was like, amazing. And then the other part, as we've gone into like more detailed, complicated aspects, like much bigger processes, I found that I have a capacity to deal with so much change at once before it starts to get to the point where I feel a little bit overwhelmed. And I've also been managing my team in the same way of just finding where that those little like pressure edges are, so that when we're implementing something that is a big change, we're doing it in pieces. It's not pushing people beyond their capacity to manage the change. And also in terms of our communication, really refining the bits of what is critical for me to know, so that I just know this is how it works, and not necessarily all the detail and all of the incredible things she's doing in the background that's fun for her to show me, but not necessarily necessary for me to know, because my bandwidth on being able to hold that level of detail, because I'm more of a, here's where we're going, big picture person, gets cooked really quickly. So I guess the couple of parts in that is we've only implemented as much change that's been healthy and ecological for everyone all at once. When we're having big change conversations, I make sure I come to the calls with my energy full and my bandwidth available to take it on, and communicate in a way that, okay, I'm starting to hit my bandwidth on change. So
Love it.
managing those pieces has made our process really seamless, and also made the implementation of things fast. If we were to do it all at once, I would easily get overwhelmed and be like, oh, it's too hard, and freak out. I'm like, oh, cling. I notice the moment that I start to cling for my old thing, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to hit my bandwidth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also definitely feel like part of what makes it available. So firstly, there is like, I'll give Kelly details, but I'm still not telling her 90% of it.
Yeah.
So her level of detail and my level of detail is very different. And I think that one of the things that has people that I co-create with in this way be available to sort of letting go of control to some degree is the trust that they have in me.
Mhm.
And so the sensation that they receive in their body is that I have it covered.
Yeah.
And so there isn't like question marks. Did she do this thing? Do I have to follow her up? Da, 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 da. And I think for Kelly and I, because we had a pre-existing friendship, the level of trust and like the way that we kind of know each other in our lives meant that I know when she's maxed and I don't even bother to ring her. And she is able to trust that if she just kind of mentions that something isn't really working, that the next time she speaks to me, the thing will be fixed. And so there's definitely a trust factor that I think supports with the capacity to let go of control, because I totally understand. Like I've even had to let go of control to some degree by having assistants support me in the building, because they're not as across the system as I am. And so I have to go and check everything that they do. But there's still, we have to build trust in the co-creation, but also in ourselves, that even if it doesn't go right, we can handle it, if it doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking about that specific thing in a session with someone this morning, because the aspect it all we know this, that it all starts with self-trust. And so we were talking before the call about traditional business and creativity, and how we don't necessarily look at business and corporate structures as being creative. So I want to move to the relationship aspect of business because of what you've both spoke about. How do we go about creating relationships of trust in these creative structures? What from the business owner's perspective and from the planner, the supportive person's perspective, how would you both say, what would you both say is the most important aspects of allowing that trust to unfurl?
Do you want to answer, or do you want me to?
You go first, because I'm curious about what you're going to say.
So trust for me, the foundational pieces on trust for me is, as you mentioned, the inner relationship of trust that I've built with myself. I know that if I say something, that I will, without there being some kind of like big exception, will follow through on the very thing that I said I will do. So I have a lot of self-trust. And I have also been through enough things now that even if shit hits the fan, we'll figure it out. Like, it's not, no one's going to die. It's all going to be okay. So I have a really good relationship there. And then all the people that I work with and the people on my team, this is such a kinesthetic experience. I don't know how I'm going to quantify this. But I also have, like, when I'm making like a big decision, I usually get like the tingle feeling that there's just, I can feel my soul talking to me that this is the right person, or this is the right path that I'm moving on. The times where I haven't had that are the times where it's cost me big bucks. And I've always, obviously, I have that close relationship with Carissa. I trust how she thinks. I trust how she executes. She has been in my business for a couple of years now, and she knows how we do things. So when it comes to making some big decisions, if she can't get hold of me, I trust her with the autonomy to make that decision, because she knows the flow like well enough and long enough now that for her to advocate for me on that behalf. And for me, another key thing that I'm looking for with trust in someone else is, do they do what they say they're going to do? And if they don't, how do they clean that up? Because life does happen. And then also, if what they execute doesn't have the result that they thought it would, if something goes wrong in that, how are they accountable for it? And how are they willing to work with me to have that come into alignment?
Love it.
Some of those pieces you don't know until you're in it.
Totally.
And then also, like, if we're talking corporate, one of the biggest things that I have learnt is get things in writing so you know who's accountable for what. Particularly if we're dealing with corporate as much as, and then it's just easy. And it's like, well, you said this, and then I delivered this, and then we're like, it just makes the accountability piece a lot easier.
Yeah.
Doing some due diligence, like what rungs do people have on the board? There's a saying that I really live by. Who are you? What have you done? And did you do it gracefully? Because there are so many people and it's so much hard. Like, people are great on their front end marketing. They're so great at it. I would rather work with the person who's not huge on the front end of their marketing with the 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 followers, yet know them as a person, see the work they've done with other people, the results they've got, and choose to work with them every time than people that are loud in the marketplace.
100%. 100%. Like the way in which somebody conducts themselves in those tricky moments, like you said, if something doesn't go right, is when you really learn how somebody works. And one of the things that I feel, just in answer to your question, Kirsty, is because Kelly, if I use this, our relationship as an example, because Kelly has done so much work on herself and the way that she conducts herself and the trust that she's built in herself and her capacity to handle if something goes wrong, it means that if something, like, so for example, 2 days ago was Kelly's birthday. And I spent the whole day preparing to host a dinner party for her for her birthday. And I saw messages coming through from her and from the team, like needing things that were, somewhat urgent. And at that time, all my attention and focus was on the other things that I needed to do that day. And it just so happened that on the same day, like, there was things that needed to be done. And whilst they were, to some degree urgent, if they don't get done, like in a split second, Kelly's not having a hernia. She's not freaking out. And that level of, I guess, release of control means that if something kind of fucks up, like, you're holding yourself in the way of, like, integrity in the way that you co-create as well. And I think that I see how people, when they're holding that level of control, how they conduct their relationships in business or in, their mission, how they're co-creating with kind of workers, I guess you would call it. And they burn relationships because they're so stressed about the outcome or about this thing that they perceive to be urgent, but it's really not that urgent. And they have a hernia when something's not done because they're freaking out and they're gripping onto scarcity, typically because they're worried, if I don't do this thing, then I can't make money. If I don't do this thing, then I'm going to receive some complaint from someone that I can't handle being in the face of that. And so therefore I have to, like, mitigate all problems, period. And so I feel like the way that we, like, interact in our lives is definitely a huge part of it. And for me personally, I'm so, like, energetically attuned to if somebody lives in integrity versus what their marketing kind of says, using that example that you said, Kelly. And I'm really discerning about who I'm going to work with. And I think it's really that part that you said, Kelly, about, like, having things in writing. I think that when you're someone who conducts yourself with a really high level of integrity and a really high, and integrity is one of your highest values, there's this natural sense of, like, well, everybody must do that, right? And then every now and again we'll get hit sideways with this, like, surprise, I'm someone who's not going to do that, and I don't value integrity, and that's not something that's important to me. And then you get sideswiped because you're like, oh crap, And what I heard when you sort of said that about, we have things in writing and stuff, it's where the blend of, like, the structure and the flow come together. Because if we create in a way that doesn't have any systems that support us, then when we get hit sideways, we've got nothing to fall back on. We've got no support, And when we have too much structure and no flow, then we also have a problem. But when we have, it's like bringing some of the more 3D aspects of business into the really flowful kind of 5D aspects of business, it creates this beautiful balance. And one of those is like contracts and things, agreements. And I know Kirsty and I would talk probably in the language of agreements because of the structures of how we offer things. But in a 3D structure, it needs to be like a contract that someone signs. And that actually just like brings me to the point of like sovereignty, you know, and when we're co-creating with people that haven't kind of gone on the journey of sovereignty, we do have to have a little bit more in place to support the kind of general, I guess, lack of that. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that we get to make sure that we've got the systems in place that support, because when we are co-creating with people that haven't got the level of self-responsibility and integrity that's required, then that can create problems. And so I think for me personally, the people that I will say yes to when it comes to systems, like I'm very particular because I don't take on a lot of people in that area of what I do. And I will only work with someone that feels really fun for me to work with, someone who's got the level of kind of grace in the way that they co-create. Because I mean, I can solve a problem better and quicker than most. But if you want to pressure that onto me and you can't handle just waiting until it's done, and that's not to say that I don't do it in a timely manner, because I do, but it's like, how are you holding yourself in the face of potential problems, or how are you perceiving it as a problem, etc., that I think makes a really big impact in the relationship as well.
100%.
Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it? It always comes back to that higher level of how is someone conducting themselves. And when we're walking in integrity, and when we're naturally going to meet others in integrity, and sometimes we're going to meet others that aren't in integrity because we need to learn something from that. So I wanted to circle back on something that was mentioned. I think it was before we started. And we were talking about, no, it was during the call. Kelly, you said, why do we have to do things the way that they've always been done? Yeah. And to me, that's a classic creative's way of speaking, especially in the world of finance. And so that the willingness to question what's there, the structure that's there, and to be then able to come across, it does take a high level of self-trust in order to put something across to others. And so as I'm speaking, I'm not actually sure what my question was, but I'm really curious as to the challenges that you overcame which you've obviously done really gracefully, and you've got a beautiful, graceful team that's supporting you in that. But the challenges that you overcame as you went, you know what, we can actually do this differently, just because finance has always been done this way. What are some of those challenges that you faced?
Great question, because it wasn't always graceful for me at all, even a little bit. It was when you said that, I literally had this like timeline of images kind of like pop up of like graceful. I don't know about this bit. But so the thing with finance, like for a long time, I used to love the fact that I had a bit of an inner rebel. And I thought this was like one of like my better qualities, because if I had my mind fixed on something, like it was happening. And there was an aspect of that my inner rebel would also rebel against myself and rebel against the very things that were good for me. So sometimes if I was given a process, and this is also the journey of mastery, I would look at the process and go, I'll do this, that looks unnecessary, this step, and be like, why don't I get the result? And in life, that'll reflect back to you in all kinds of like funky manifestations, sometimes direct, sometimes a little more indirect. However, with finance, where there are very specific processes and things that must be done to complete a finance application and settle finance, my God, do you get your shit reflected back to you so quickly? And it was like, even though I could literally see the system step, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, my brain would go 1, 3, skip 4, 5, or 1, 2, 4, 5, and I'd keep getting, but like, you're missing this. You've done the address name doesn't match the license, or the like whatever. I'm like, fuck. So and this was like when I was doing like car finance, boats, bikes, like traditional asset finance. And I was like, oh my God, there would be times where I'd cry, or I'd be scared I just wouldn't even bother check. I'd just like submit it to someone, like, tell me what I've done wrong so I can go back and fix it up. And like, I'd go to my kinesiology sessions and I'm like, do I have brain damage? Like, I literally, my brain would just skip. It would be like a scratch on the record. And I'm like, oh, I'd worked so hard to try and learn the value of following a system to get a result. And I was like, it was like tangible. Like, I follow the system, I get paid $1,000. I follow the system, I get paid $3,500. But no, could not do it. And I was like, then somehow I realized, and this is like when my best friend, because it used to be, or my crew, best friend of Carissa and I, another friend of ours, I had the finance brokerage with her. And she'd come back from an event and she found out that one of her friends had grown his coaching business from like a 7-figure a year revenue based business into a 7-figure cash received business. And in the coaching space, that's huge because most people pay on extended payment plans. You might get 10 to 20% of people paying upfront, and everybody else in the coaching space will typically pay that off over a period of time. So you might be having large revenue months like 60, 70, 100K, but your actual gross like money that you're receiving in your bank might be 20K, 30K, and you've got to run a business off that. And when you're running like an enterprise where you've got $1 million turnover, you've got to pay your staff. And then all of a sudden you feel like you're in scarcity. It's like, I've got all this money, but it's not showing in my bank account. And when she asked him, how did you do that? Like, how did you crack this mythical code? And he was like, I've been using finance. She's like, I own a finance brokerage. Like, who are you using? And the lender that he said, and we were like, oh, we never touched that because it was personal loans. And at the time, personal loan rates were much higher than they are now. And we were like, oh, maybe, but from a in-house payment plan perspective, where coaches charge anywhere between 15 to 20% for the in-house payment plan, the personal loan product actually looks sexy because that was somewhere around worst case scenario 18 or 19%. So we're like, maybe we can do something with this. Then we integrated it into her business and the rest kind of just followed on. And that's where things got creative for me because it solved 2 problems. One, with personal loans, I just put the data into the application and then the lender takes care of the contracts and the settlements and all the parts that I would always just balls up. So that solved my follow the process. And then the second part where my creativity really started coming in was that we were able to look at a product in a way that we'd never looked at a product before and then offer it to a space that solved a problem that was drowning in. So it became very unique that there were other people that were trying to do it, but there were finance brokers going into the coaching world, whereas I'm a coach as a finance broker serving my people. So I intimately understood the issues with their business. I understood the process their clients go through to say yes. I understood all of the nuances and the intricacies because I had my own coaching business. Like I was in it. So I knew exactly how to talk to these people and how to serve these people and what to do with this product, both from the referral partners being the coaches and both as the clients going through the process. So I knew how to make that easy. And then that just kind of took over itself and has evolved. So it was a little bit of dumb luck and desperation as much and purpose finding me as much as me also trying to get out of like trying to do a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 system because I just couldn't, to the best of my ability was struggling.
I love that. I feel like one of the pieces in there that you didn't really mention, but what I was receiving from it was how aligned the industry is for you. So even though finance itself might seem like something that, like when you're doing boats and cars and stuff, they might not have excited you to the same degree because the alignment between you and the coaching industry is so strong. And it reminded me that, like, even though the way that I work in systems and tech is like, you know, high level, I don't want to co-create in industries that don't feel fun for me.
Yeah.
And so, like, you know, it's about blending those 2 pieces. Like, and I feel like when they have something that they are a master at or a genius at and they feel stuck that they have to offer it in a particular way, they can get creative and look kind of outside the box and consider outside the scope of how that can look. And, you know, even as, again, back to me offering tech things and systems things, I know a lot of tech and systems people that run, like they have the same kind of genius as me, but they run it through the really kind of 3D business model. There's a lot of like, how do I get, you know, a lot of trying to get. And I can't resonate with that. And so, you know, my alignment for the types of offerings or businesses that I want to co-create with makes it really specific for me. And I think the same is true for lifestyle finance. It's specifically for the coaching industry. It's for the people that are offering things that are changing lives. And that's what makes it in alignment. And I'd be really surprised if you stuck with finance as long as you did, if it wasn't in the contract, wasn't in the coaching industry. I can't imagine that.
No, I wouldn't have. I would have got very bored, and I would have felt like a part of me was dying, and I would have been continuously trying to find my own little side purpose hustlles. And even now, I don't write loans anymore. It's been this, I haven't done, oh, that's not true, because I've trained another staff member, and I had to do some loan writing during that time. But, and again, now that I've just started doing a new part of the business where I'm actually going to rooms and being at the back of the room in events and helping our referral partners refining their pitches, and then having people sign up and get their finance stuff done at the back of the room, like I am back in. But very rarely do I ever write a loan now, and even then I do the application part, and then I give it to one of my brokers to deal with. So it's not like I do as little loan writing from that aspect as possible. And the only times where I'm really doing it is in a training situation where I'm training new staff, or if I'm supporting referral partners where I'm actually in the room with them. But even then, the actual brokering part, it's off to my team.
What I've heard is the willingness to open to something new, and then asking, well, what's possible? And also knowing, well, actually the step before all of that is actually knowing the vision and knowing the value of what it is that this person is actually receiving when they, in your case, when they take this loan, is what you put into your heart and what helps you to be able to move in integrity. And so this is really the key to this creative aspect, is the alignment, the discernment, and knowing that as long as I move in integrity, I'm going to find ways, and it's going to continue to open to me. Like, it wasn't graceful at the beginning, but you were continually willing to open to something new, which created more and more flow. That was what I received from listening to both of you in that conversation, and not taking shortcuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because I feel like everything that I do is about creating shortcuts, but I have to put all the pieces in place in order for the shortcut to be created, which is such a manifesting generator, typical like human design thing for me. It's like, create the shortcut. One of the things that I heard when you shared, Kelly, which triggered a memory or a thought for me, is about how like the biggest creativity killer is doing something that doesn't feel fun for us.
Oh my God.
Finding team to do the things that aren't what lights us up is one of the most important things for scaling and growth. You cannot scale and grow to the degree in which most people have the dream of it when you're doing all the things either from that control perspective, or doing all the things that don't light you up at all, purely out of a state of scarcity. And so, you know, Kelly having somebody do the systems for her meant that she didn't have to think about it. You know, her having a broker, it meant that she could hand the broker part to the broker, and then she can focus on the business and the building and the marketing and all the beautiful like relationship building and the podcasts and all of the fun things that she gets to do. And I feel like this is the same is true for me. You know, like I have to outsource as much as I can. Even in our podcast co-creation with Kirsty, the idea of like editing the videos and creating the shorts, like I did it so that I could like learn how to do it. And then I got to a point where I was like, nah, for 3 hours it'll take me to do this. I can pay somebody, you know, $30 to $100 to do that task, and I can spend that 3 hours doing something for Kelly instead, that I can actually, firstly, like there's an exchange happening there. And also it's like much more fun for me to do that than it is video editing. And there's someone out there who loves doing video editing, you know, it's not me. And so, but it just, I think from a creativity perspective, it really, if we're feeling bogged down by a task and it's either not getting done because we feel so overwhelmed by the idea of doing it that we just don't do it and it just stays on the sideline forever, like it's a pretty good sign that your creativity is buzzed out. If there's a task that's important that you just keep shoving to the side, again, from a human design perspective, like if you're not on for it, then like good freaking luck. And I think it's a really powerful point of outsourcing when it comes to our creativity, so that we can spend the most time in our genius. And it's funny because I heard somebody recently talk about how they took, you know, don't do anything that isn't your genius zone to like the nth degree. And it ended up kind of not working out super well for her because she outsourced everything in her life, which meant that she had, like, she wasn't kind of in the creativity as well. She almost took it too far down the other side, and she ended up spending more than she had, and it kind of burnt her in the wrong direction. However, I think when it's done healthily, then it's the best and most important way. Like, you couldn't be doing what you're doing if you were still writing loans.
Absolutely not. And even when I get bogged in that a little bit, it just, I feel it draining my soul. And also the way that it just, loan writing is fast, and when things are coming at me that fast, it just doesn't, it's like I'm in it and I can't see above. I think the other thing that really helps too with my creativity and understanding the business is I've done every single job in the business and I can do it very well, except for the systems part. I was literally having this moment. I was having it the other week where I was actually sitting in there. This has evolved so well beyond my understanding of tech. Like, I have fully had to surrender and let that part go, because if something broke and I didn't have a Carissa, I would be like, literally. That's above. But in terms of every other job that everybody else does in my business, I can do it. And again, I literally had that moment the other day at I've always been able to do it better, until I literally had this moment at the last event that I was supporting at. And I was like, I am not as up to date as the lenders and the nuances as my team. I'm like, wow, they're better than me now. And I had this moment of like, I'm also surrendering and letting go of that and celebrating that they are now at that level.
Yeah, what a gift.
Yeah, it's such an amazing gift. And the other thing too, like when you've got people in their genius zone doing the thing that they're great at, when you get together to have a creative conversation about how can we make this better for ourselves? How can we make this better for our referral partners? It's sort of the collective creative mind becomes something that supersedes anything else that you could individually tap into. And then the key to like continuing that momentum is, once idea comes, plan and execute. And the more that you can plan and execute from the creativity that comes out of those conversations, the more it feeds itself.
I love
100%.
that. Yeah. I remember reading Think and Grow Rich years ago, and reading the story of Henry Ford, and how Henry said, I don't really know anything, because I have all these people around me who tell me they're the experts and they give me the advice and I just make the decision. And that's really what you're talking about, this scale and grow, plan and execute. That's what we're doing. And that's the key to creativity in this arena, as I'm hearing and listening to what you're saying. I'm loving this conversation. It's awesome.
Yeah. And it had me just think also about, well, maybe to take on a slightly different tangent, is it's really interesting. I've been like thinking about a lot of things as we've been talking here about how people typically associate like debt to be problematic. There's something, and when we talk about finance and loans, obviously when we're loaning something, then we are to some form in debt. And I know that like we've done lots of reprogramming about what that means and and it means to us not the same thing that it would typically mean to society. And the idea of like loaning, whether it be on a payment plan or whether it be through finance, to pay for something has been really stigmatized to be this like negative problem. You should be able to pay up front. However, what Kelly has shared through some of her marketing and different things, and I'd love you to speak on this, is this is how the 1% do it. This is how they literally loan for everything. And they're typically in a lot of debt. They have a lot of I don't know what the word is, like finance to their name. And a lot of things they don't technically own.
Yeah, it's really clever. And I love that you brought that up, because I find that how we think about, even how I think about finance and how I encourage our referral partners to talk to their clients about finance is quite creative. And also the architecture within lifestyle finance itself is quite creative from a mission business structure. So I'll start there and work it right down to what it actually means when you take out a personal loan to invest in yourself. So the way that I like to think of it, or how lifestyle finance is operating within the new Earth business grid, within this shift of collective consciousness into this new collaborative way of doing business, is that lifestyle finance is, for the better use of a word, a filter or a bridge. And what we're doing is we're taking money out of what would otherwise be considered dense 3D realities, banking system, with all of its pros and cons. We take money from there because they've got lots of money to give. We bring it through our filter of lifestyle finance, and then we release it into the hands of the new Earth business owners, the new world builders that are doing amazing things, creating incredible communities. And then when their clients who are using that money to invest in their growth, to raise their consciousness, to also be part of this new way and living on purpose and passion, when they're making repayments on the money they borrowed from the banks, the 3D grids, they're putting light deposits into this system with every repayment. So essentially what's happening from a collective perspective is that we're raising the consciousness of the banking system one repayment at a time. Because, to quote Marianne Williamson, when I saw her when she was here last, there was something that she said that I was like, oh, of course. And this is even when like councils of light talk to us, it's the same thing. When the field of higher consciousness touches the field of lower consciousness, it can't help but be transformed. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but it will be transformed because that seed of light has been planted. And it's about making it grow. And this is why councils of light are so happy to come and co-create with humanity and help us raise consciousness, and then don't get upset with us when we go do the opposite thing, because they've already planted the seed of light that will eventually grow and blossom, and will come along on the way. And so I kind of like the overarching intention of what we're doing with lifestyle finance in this same manner. The banking system has no idea what we're doing. Every repayment of every client, and we're looking at somewhere around anywhere between 80 to 100 people a month, growing by 100 people a month each month, and that's also exponentially increasing. We're raising this banking system's consciousness. It doesn't know about it yet. It is happening though.
I love that visual. That's such a beautiful visual. Thank you for sharing that.
They're sneaky little seeds of light deposit that will, like any banking system, when you deposit into your savings account, it will invest in interest and eventually mature, and you can reap the reward. So that's happening without them even knowing about it. And then when we come like right down to the consumer perspective, and we're looking a little bit more like tangible, what's happening in this transaction is that when a lot of people, when they do their weekly budget, might be like, okay, cool, let's work off $1,000 because it's just easy numbers. So they might have $1,000 in their monthly surplus budget once they've done all of the expenses. They pay for their rent, their cars, their insurance, their food, all the other bits and pieces. And they'll have a look at it and they'll go, okay, I've got $1,000 left over a month. I really want to do this course. It's going to cost me $12,000 and I have 12 months to pay it off at $1,000 a month. And they look at it like, then that leaves me with nothing. What if life happens? What if the kids need something? What about the cars? And $1,000 a month is a lot to invest in your own personal development when it comes at such a high stakes to financial security. And you don't know if interest rates are going to go up or what's going on there. So this is where finance becomes really powerful, because we can take that $12,000 a month $12,000 investment in yourself, and we can make that as little as $75 a week, which was, and let's call it the best part of $300 a month. So that leaves you still with $700 a month for life, in case something happens with the car, in case you need to take the kids to camp or the animal to the vet or whatever it is. It comes out of your account in a way that you barely miss it. So 2 really important things are happening here. One is that you get to invest in yourself to develop the inner resources to live your life on purpose, passion, to be the better parent, to be the better friend, for whatever it is, like to start the online business, whatever it is. 2, most importantly, because it's not coming at a financial stretch to you, you are now building in abundance.
Yeah.
And you can do it in a way that has your nervous system be open and receptive. And for creativity to breed, you need to have a regulated nervous system. Otherwise, if you're in fight, flight, freeze, chaos, there is no creativity coming through. So it helps alleviate that financial part, because a lot of people's like, say yes and figure out how, and they're literally like, they're selling their car or they're doing something to make this huge investment, and yes, it gets them in the door, but now what about the coming months? What about after that? And it's great leaning in and trusting and figuring out how, but I don't know about you, I've been through that process a few times, and I'm not I'm not in a calm state. I'm like flying by the seat of my pants going, oh my God, I hope this works, kind of thing. Like I am not calm. I am beyond, like there's calm and I'm somewhere over here. So one, it helps with that. And I guess the third part, because again, we're here to help people. And a lot of the time, people don't know how to manage their money, purely because they're not educated. So they might have other small credit cards, they might have some other loans, they might have some other pieces that they're paying off to other, course providers. We'll consolidate all of that with the new course. So often what they end up paying with the new commitment is less per month than what they were already paying, and they just think that's amazing, and it's guaranteed to be paid out within a time frame. It's not like a credit card where you just keep getting revolving credit and paying 20 something interest. Like it's organized, it's usually done at somewhere around 10 to 14%, and so they have this beautiful experience. And then beyond that, when coaches get paid in full, well, now they've got fuel for their business. They can hire staff, so they're creating more opportunity. They can grow, scale, increase their message, create greater impact. And this is where we hit the ripple effect, or the ripple effect, the tipping point, and the ripple effect of that, where consciousness is raising exponentially. This is how we create the fastest change. Yet we do it in a way that's accessible to so many more people.
Yeah, it's funny when you were saying, when I loved all of that. When you were saying about how people have the like $1,000 of disposable income and they decide like they've got a $12,000 course and they say, oh, well, it's going to cost me $1,000 a month. I've got nothing left. The other thing that they say is, great, I'll save up for a year.
Oh my God. And they never do.
Well,
They
not
don't do
only
it.
that, but it's like the time is now. Like if you're feeling like genuinely pulsed to do something that's going to, and like you said, the exponential growth of the consciousness at the moment is so fast. 12 months, like, honey, you're going to not be doing that in 12 months. So beyond. And so, and the other piece that I thought of when you were sharing was like scarcity kills creativity. And so if you're wanting to, particularly for like coaches or people that are running their own kind of soul-led business or anything like that, if they're in scarcity financially, then like that is going to be such a killer for the creation of and the growth of and the scaling of whatever it is that you're creating. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because we've been there for sure, like killing the growth because of being in scarcity. Been such a big lesson for me in my life. I love it as well because the coaches and the people that are your referral partners, they're in service to others, and so their actual desire and their mission is to increase and help humanity ascend. And so we're fueling the growth of this new earth, which is why we're continuing to ascend at so much of a faster rate. So I loved everything about what you just shared then. Thank you for putting it so simply, and there was some awesome visuals there.
Thank you. And the other part in it too, this is the creativity part. And most people don't go beyond this because they're being taught to think personal loans are bad. They might have $200 to invest and they'll look at the $200 and go, that's not much. Like, I can't do anything with that. And it'll be like, oh, I'll save up till. And like the people that save up till, we're talking no more than 5% of the population actually do that. Most of people, when they get paid more, they spend more. Unless they have something to commit that to, they will spend it. Or because of the way that their unconscious mind is programmed, all sorts of life things will find ways to take that. So the creative question is, I have $200. How much can I turn that into? And then what can I do with that? So $200, like if we're looking at $200 a week from a personal loan perspective, we're looking at somewhere around 35, maybe even $40,000 you can turn that into. So if you exchange your $200 a week for $40,000, what can you reinvest that $40,000 into? That's either going to create you a business or help you get the skills you need to up level at your job, or to put 20 grand into crypto, like whatever. How do you turn that $200 a week into as much money as you can, and then how do you reinvest that in an intelligent way that's going to get you a return on investment? That is the creative, intelligent question.
Did you feel that?
Boom.
Even if you look at any successful entrepreneur, they will tell you. So like if I think of all like the big different events that I've been to, there's one story that stands out, and it was T. Harv Eker. It was one of the first events I ever went to called Millionaire Mind. 3-day event. If you want to do money work, it's awesome. Yes, it is cheesy personal development, but you take that out, there are aspects of it still to this day. I'd probably even go back and do it just because it really like puts your money shit in your face. Like it is, you can't get away from it. Anyway, one of his stories, he's so American, and bless him, but there was a story where he was selling treadmills, and this is where treadmills at home, like daytime television or something, became this really big thing. And he got like a $2,000 credit card to buy his first treadmill. He bought his first treadmill, he sold it, then he bought another one, and then he had this like tiny little shop, and he was selling all these treadmills out of there, but it all started off the back of a $2,000 credit card because that's all he could get. And he just hustled. And so this is where, but he had nothing. He turned nothing into $2,000. I don't even know how he got a credit card. Back then, there was all sorts of ways you could cheat the system. However, he did get a $2,000 credit card, and that's how he started his business. So these are the parts where the credit that is easily available to us, what can we do with that? And I like personal loans over credit cards because personal loans will be paid off in a period of time, and their interest rate is like a third of what you'd get on a credit card. There's far less risk. And you can also get way more on a personal loan than you would for a credit card with your same income level. This is where we start to get really creative. Anybody can break out of the 3D system if they know how to use what's available to them in a creative way.
Totally. And it actually sort of made me think just then about how to make choices like that ecologically, because that guy with the treadmill was willing to do the thing that required him to like make the most out of his investment. And I think a lot of people are doing what you said, oh, it'll work out, you know, and huge magical thinking of, if I just trust it'll unfold. And it's like, yeah, and action.
Action.
Two have to go together. And I think that that's an important part that a lot of people kind of grab onto when they think about all the reasons why they shouldn't do it, because they're thinking about the people who haven't been taking action, the people who have been doing the $2,000 loan to buy the treadmill, but then never actually take it to market, and then complain that they have a freaking credit card debt and that they're going to be paying it off for the rest of their life. And it's like, yeah, but if you take the action associated with the thing, then you sell the treadmill and your investment is then paying for itself. And I think that this is a really important part, particularly in this industry, of people that are typically on that more kind of spiritual journey, if you will, and they go through the phase of and so many do, of that kind of magical thinking. I'll trust and it'll come. I'll trust and it'll come. And whilst that is true, it's also true that you have to take action. It's also true that it has to be a tangible, like physical thing that kind of has the train have tracks. You can't just have the train without the tracks. And so, yeah, I think that that's a thing that people can consider when they're thinking about their investing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That piece that I shared earlier, like when I'm making a decision, who are you? What have you done? And did you do it gracefully? There's a fourth part of that I didn't add. I was like, it was bothering me. And right when you said that, Carissa, it just dropped in. Do I like your process?
Mm.
And does your process work for me? Because this is the ones that are like, come to my 5 a.m. club. We all get up at 5 a.m. Early bird gets the worm. But you're someone who's always slept to midday. And for you to do that, you've got to like completely change who you are. You might be able to do that unless it's actually your organic blueprint. You might be able to do that for a period of time, but you're going to revert. You need to find the people that come to my lunchtime club and be a millionaire, because they're the ones that are doing the process that works with you. And I think this is like, in terms of this action piece that Carissa is talking about, which is so key. You have to like the process, because if you're a fish and you're being asked to climb a tree, no matter your best intentions, you're never going to get up that tree. You need to be a monkey to climb a tree and a fish to swim. So when you're looking at this kind of stuff, if you're a passive person, go do an ecom trader course and trade. There's a perfect example. There was this gorgeous soul. I think this was before your time, Carissa, in Gabby's mastermind. This is still when it was like, I don't even know if it was first class mastermind yet. It might have been, I can't remember, whatever it was before that. But there was one particular member. It literally took her 3 years to create a brochure. And she finally created this brochure. And we celebrated her for creating this brochure. And then she'd left the mastermind. And I caught up with her probably like, I don't know, 2 years later. And she'd done this traders course. And she'd been trading gold and now was like helping kids in Africa. And she'd made a killing from trading gold by finding something that was more in alignment with the nature of her, as opposed to having this big front end business where you have to be the character of the brand. Like she was never going to be the character of the brand. She was the fish climbing the tree. Whereas when she found the water, my God, did she swim? And I think this is like the piece that Chris is talking about, like the key piece, like the action and the thing that you're choosing to invest in, that you're taking that money and investing it into something. It has to, like, one, did the person do it gracefully, and do you like the process? Like, is that obtainable for you, or are you trying to go ahead?
It's aligned action, isn't it? If you're taking aligned action with yourself, then you're going to know if the other person's process suits you and what it is that you want to do. But if you're not taking any sort of action, then you're actually not going to know if you like the other person's process in the first place. So there's this little loop that's going on here within ourselves of, I actually need to take action in order to know if somebody else's process is gonna match up with me anyway.
Yeah. And it also makes me think about the discernment that's required when something's marketed to us.
Yeah, totally.
Because the amount of skill that some people have in order to hook you into wanting something, and this circles me right on back to the sovereignty piece, is when we can determine whether it's actually in alignment or whether the NLP is just working the exact way that it's designed to work to have me hooked. If we can determine the difference between those things, we are going to be better at investing in the things that actually are aligned with us. Yeah. Because if we can't see through the shades of the tactics that are used to have us say yes to something, then we will make unintelligent investment things, and we will say yes to things that are unaligned, because we are like, oh my gosh, everything in my body is saying yes to this thing. And it's like, yeah, that's because that person is a master at NLP and they absolutely know how to have that response in your body. It's very smart. And And this is where the real attunement to our body comes in. It's like that deeper layer of sensation and a deeper layer of our connection with our bodies, and why it's so important when it comes to making decisions, because I'm so like, I mean, I can see it from a mile away because I have an understanding of the words and the things that are used in order. And because I have that, I have a sensation in my body that tells me, alert, alert, this is because they're really good at it, instead of, oh, this feels so yummy, I'm so into this. Like, there's a very big difference in the sensation in my body. And I've been able to determine that even though my whole body's like, yes, it's actually like, no. and and it's something that I don't know how you teach necessarily without having, I mean, for me, the way that I've learned it is being attuned to my body and having an understanding of sales, so that when I see selling, I know what's happening. But I don't know how you would teach it outside of that, apart from just, you know, the soul alignment, taking actions that are in alignment, and trusting the pieces beyond the effect that somebody else is having on us.
I don't think you can teach it. I don't think you can teach it to that degree, because go back to where we started, it all comes to self-trust, really, and developing that level of self-trust in our own ability to discern what's right, what's real for us, and then moving from that place.
True.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. The moment that the word alignment came up was that you touched on it, Carissa, and you just brought it back, Kirsty, was that alignment can, like, true alignment can only happen when we truly know ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we can feel, like Chris said, although, ooh, this feels, and this is where people get caught. They're like, well, I was aligned. I felt all the things going off in my body.
Yeah.
But the piece is and having, like, the discernment and the sovereignty and the self-trust of knowing, like, am I going to do that? Like, if I was to start a gym program where we had to exercise in the afternoon, every afternoon, I might show up for the first week, but then I'm out. It's just not where I function. And it might be the best program in the whole world, but if I have never done my workouts in the afternoon, and every time I've made an appointment to do something in the afternoon like that, and I'm like, nah, why would I be saying yes to the $10,000 program thinking that I'm going to magically show up for myself there? But if you told me that's going to happen at 8:30 every morning, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm already doing something similar to that.
Yeah. And it highlights the people have an association with alignment that means something good had to happen.
Yeah.
And people don't always recognize that your alignment might be to go and learn that hard lesson where you didn't trust your intuition. Your alignment is that you go and you spend and make the hard freaking decision, the hard lesson, because you weren't listening all the 50 times before that. And so this is aligned, actually, for you to sign up, do this thing, not get the results, not get what it is that you want. And then to say I'm not aligned, it's like, no. The only part that then wouldn't be alignment is if you're not then receiving the medicine that has been presented to you through making that decision. And I think sometimes the body is telling the truth. It is a yes for me to do that. And it's because what we need to learn from that experience is something that might not be as fun. And so I think it's important for us to not lean on the alignment and say, well, I mustn't have been aligned because it didn't work out in the good way that I thought it would. Yeah. And sometimes we, like, when a door closes, you know, that we thought was like aligned, and we get real fussed about it. And then later on we realize, oh no, that was absolutely aligned for that to stop, because it meant that this other thing was happening, you know, but we associate it with it. If I'm in alignment, then it has to be a good outcome.
Such a great conversation. I love it. So many little pieces of gold. Thanks for joining us today, Kelly.
Yeah, it's been awesome to have you here.
It's so fun. I could go on for, like, when you're talking about these alignment pieces of, like, where was the line, but it didn't really feel like a big cuddly teddy bear and lots of abundance at the end of it. There were a few things that were like pop, pop, and I'm like, yeah, those things needed to happen though.
Yeah,
exactly.
totally.
My own sense of self-worth that came out of that, my own sense of self-knowing, discernment.
Yeah.
Also some things that I had to revisit to process that I thought that I had but hadn't, that have been, if those pieces didn't happen, it wouldn't have opened up what's been that is now present for me.
Totally.
And some of
And
them
that's
feel very cuddly at the time.
the little piece to add on to that. Go back to what you said about grace. And grace doesn't always mean that everything's going to be easy without challenge.
It's how we deal with it when
How
it
we deal
is
with it.
challenging.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's an awesome place to end today.
Totally. Thank you, Kelly, for being here. Thanks for sharing your beautiful energy and your lovely awasomeness with us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. That was so fun.
Yay. All right. Bye, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.